Hi, Papa Yeager here. Having finished John Lewis's graphic memoir, March, Book 1, of course I had to read March, Book 2. It was just as good as Book 1, maybe even a little better. I'm familiar with the Civil Rights Movement. I'm familiar with John Lewis's role in the Civil Rights Movement. But I'm not as familiar as I should have been. This book really did teach me quite a bit. I mean, my son makes fun of graphic memoirs, graphic novels, says they're not real books because they have pictures. But this book is just really good. The pictures, I'm not so much into seeing and looking at the pictures. For me, it was the information. But there's so much going on that I like the format, because I think if he had tried to tell the same story as a regular memoir, it would have been too wordy. And the really important information would have gotten buried. So it's just fabulous. But it's awful, really god awful to see what the African American community had to go through in order to get rights during the Civil Rights Movement. I knew John Lewis played a role, but I didn't know the extent to which he was involved. I mean, he was one of the main activists during the Civil Rights Movement. But in school, we only ever hear about Martin Luther King. That's it. There really isn't anybody else that's talked about, as if Martin Luther King Jr. was the only person involved, as if he was the only one making a difference. And that is so not true. In fact, people like John Lewis just thought Martin Luther King was too conservative, wasn't going far enough. And that's interesting, because Martin Luther King Jr. appealed to the white population because he didn't want to push things as hard. It's the white people that devised the curriculum, which makes me wonder, like, who else have they left out? I mean, I came across this book because I did a TikTok on Selma, and I know there are other people involved, like Medgar Evers, who was also assassinated, just like Martin Luther King Jr. But it's really sad that they teach the Civil Rights Movement in school more like a footnote, or something that needs to be acknowledged during February, Black History Month, not something that really needs to be studied deeply. I mean, think about it. Even the violence. I knew the violence was bad. I was aware of the violence of the freedom rides. But it was even worse than I thought it was. And I knew it was bad. This is all stuff that really needs to be taught. And now I was thinking about it. Now with all of this backlash with Trump's administration, the Civil Rights Movement was only 60 years ago. My mother, would have, during the Civil Rights Movement, my mother was not even 20 years old yet. So the people that were extremely racist and trying so hard to prevent African Americans from getting equality, the people who were perpetuating the violence, they're probably my mother's age, maybe a little older. The people who are so in favor of Trump and going backwards are my age. So it's like these people, the Civil Rights Movement got equality in theory, not necessarily in reality. And there's just been all this resentment. It's not that anybody ever, the white people that were opposed to equality never got behind it. The law supported the African Americans, but never changed the minds of the people who were vehemently opposed. They raised their children with probably a lot of the resentment and anger that they still held on to. They didn't want this equality. They still wanted to be able to say they were better. And all of that is probably an underlying reason as to why Trump making it okay to hate again. All of these feelings that have been held dormant are now exploding, and that's just terrible. Anyway, we really do need to teach more about the Civil Rights Movement in school. Everybody, all Americans, need to be aware of how bad it was, how awful the white population was down south, and the violence. The white people, they they did not seem to have a conscience, and it was terrible. Anyway, I've gone on a really long tangent, but March, book 2, John Lewis, definitely read it. I thought I knew a lot about the civil rights movement, and apparently this book taught me that I didn't know as much as I thought I did. I'm looking forward to book 3.